Content Area Writing. Chapter 1. Is there a writing crisis? American students today are not meeting even basic writing standards, and their teachers are often at a loss for how to help them. Kids may not be getting any worse at school-based prose, but they're not getting any better either. Never have so many Americans written so profusely and with so few inhibitions. Students are texting their friends on cell phones, writing and receiving instant messages, maintaining robust email correspondences, blogging, creating websites, updating their MySpace pages, publishing their poems or stories online, creating labyrinthine fantasy tales and games, composing songs and lyrics with software like GarageBand, making and sharing video clips, hanging in chat rooms, or joining threaded discussions. Students are writing for themselves and not necessarily for school. They write for themselves because they prefer to express and define themselves. When kids are interested in what they are writing about, then they will do better in what they are writing about. A recent study at the Rochester Psychiatric Center showed that writing is good for you and can make you feel better. Testing is something teachers do not have a choice but to abide by and prepare for, but that shouldn't be the sole purpose of teaching. There is some gray area when it comes to whether or not there is a crisis or not. Content Area Writing. Chapter 2. Writing to learn. List making is an important practice in our everyday lives. What types of lists do you make on a daily basis? Do you consider yourself as a list person? Did you consider your list making a type of writing before this reading? Writing to learn in school. WTLs are different from the more formal or public writing tasks teachers commonly assign students, like term papers, research reports, and critical essays. Special Ed Plus exit interview with former Education Secretary Richard M. Writing to learn in school. Short, brief in length on a page and in composing time. Spontaneous, down off the top of our heads. Exploratory, help us figure stuff out, not as a way of announcing with certainty what we already know. Informal, casual language, dressed down, relaxed and ready to spend a quiet evening at home. Personal pieces for us, the writers, not someone else. One draft. In keeping with their nature as brief, spontaneous, utilitarian jottings, they are not revised. Unedited, correcting errors and editing grammar have little role to play in WTLs. Ungraded. Red pens, they have no place in writing to learn. Do you agree that a student's writing should always be graded? Why? Why not? How did you feel when you would receive a paperback that was destroyed in red ink? Do you remember a specific moment/memory where you thought you had handed in a masterpiece but the teacher on his or her red ink thought otherwise? The intensive correction of student papers does not work. It has never worked and it never will work. People generally remember 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they hear and see, 70% of what they say and write, 90% of what they say as they do a thing. Do you have a specific example of this? Of learning better while talking through it? While doing the thing that you're learning? Why WTL? Students could copy notes down all day long and not learn a single thing. I feel like this was my entire high school career. I can relate to the people in this book that claim they do not remember anything that they learn in high school. Note-taking is not enough to guarantee solid learning. If a student doesn't apply the notes that they take and relate them to their everyday lives, it's very hard to believe that they are learning at all. They are just memorizing what they feel the teacher needs them to know for a grade. To get true learning power, kids must put ideas into their own words. The reading then shows an example of a question from a history textbook. Obviously, They're looking for a right answer here, and if a student is smart, they will just skim the reading to find this sentence within the textbook. This is not thinking. Putting the writing to work. Instead of collecting and grading these quick writes, we put them to work in the classroom. We use them to advance the learning. Large group discussions are pertinent for education, but adding the writing to learn method makes a student put forth more of an effort in a classroom. Have you ever been in a classroom that was participating in a large group discussion and you had something important to say, but by the time the teacher got to you, you didn't care to discuss anymore? Do you agree with the author in regards to the WTL method? What is a way you would incorporate WTL in your future classrooms? Hi everyone, this is Richard. Thanks Jamie for the first part. I will be covering the special education article and about the interview of a former education secretary. Enjoy! Oh, by the way, this is not how I sound in real life, lol. Quick introduction. Born and raised in New York City. History major plus education minor. Currently my goal is to teach history in high school. I had interned in a Buffalo middle school near this university as a teacher assistant to a special education teacher. Special education is quite young. It had gained attention since the 1950s and only up to 1975 when Congress first passed laws regarding special education. The updated law is called the Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA for short. There are federal and state grants for schools to provide special education services, although some districts still have to use some part of their budgets as the grants do not fully pay for it. There are 13 classifications of students of special needs, with the largest category, learning disabilities or LD. Special education is connected to the No Children Left Behind law, which is self-explanatory. The article is from the NPR website with link provided, created by Lee Hale on January 15, 2017, 6:31 a.m. It talks about Ms. Johnson on how difficult her average day of a special educator can be. Last year, Ms. Johnson had explained it as, I don't know how to describe it, it's just so much work. I just feel like I cannot do it. It had changed when she had transferred schools and had worked with another special education teacher as a two-person team in a classroom. She had help from her director, who manages the large amount of paperwork of the students with learning disabilities. Also, she had Fridays to help plan her lessons and manage the paperwork. Her methods was that, to divide and conquer, and to be good at managing paperwork. Overall, to her she is much happier now, even though she still have to wake up early and stay late according to her. I had interned as a teacher assistant to a special education teacher in Buffalo. I had training and procedures before school started from the teacher. The paperwork is no joke. There are many cabinets of paperwork for the students with learning disabilities in the school, which that were low in number. It was quite an experience. It had required a vast amount of patience, multitasking, and responsibility. The tasks that I did was reviewing other students' individual education plan and making sure they are on track, printing further paperwork, and planning lessons to match their progress levels. Ms. Johnson was telling the truth that it can be quite overwhelming. It was a rewarding experience, and I highly recommend that all teachers should be passionate for the job. Ms. Johnson was telling the truth that it can be quite overwhelming. According to the 2013 National Center for Education Statistics, about 6.5 million students, or 13% of the student population, are receiving special education. These numbers alone shows how significant special education is. Should the federal and state government provide more funding? Since public education is free, which we pay our taxes, why can't special education be free as well? Should teachers in general get further pay raises as a motive to keep high professionalism in education and continuation of further training? Current Head of Department of Education Betsy DeVos may impact special education. Stay tuned for the next slide. And welcome back. Interview of former Education Secretary. This article is from the same website of the article about special education. It was created by Corey Turner on January the 9th, 2017, 6:24 a.m. It is a recent article. It was created last month. It is a question and answer base, with former Education Secretary John B. King Jr. and the questions from NPR. John B. King Jr., according to his statement, he was raised in Brooklyn, had lost both of his parents by the age of 12 and found the stability he needed not at home, shuttling between family members, but at school. He credits several public school teachers with saving his life. He was a teacher, principal and as deputy secretary. King stressed that the Education Department is a civil rights agency with the responsibility to protect the civil rights of students and to ensure that school is a safe and supportive place for all kids. He also stressed that education is fundamental to the long-term success of our economy and our democracy. He had some tough questions during the interview, such as what he thought of standardizing testing and how he felt about his successor. He talked about how diversity is critical to schools, saying that, "I think we'd be in a better place as a country, we'd have a better dialogue, if students had the opportunity to go to school with diverse student populations and to have diverse educators in the classroom. And the research evidence bears that out. Students not only do better academically, but they are better prepared to succeed in a diverse world if they've had those diverse school experiences." Did the article clear any topics you had in mind? He professionally avoided any criticism of his would-be successor DeVos. Instead, he had gave her advice on what he thought of public education. Do you think his successor would a proper job of focusing improvements in our education system? You may have to do a background research of DeVos and what her goals are. And finally, do you have any predictions on how DeVos would regard current special education funding?